The blizzard hit Glacier 7 like a hammer from hell. Jack Rivera had worked mining colonies for 8 years, and he'd never seen anything like it. Wind speeds pushed past 200 kilometers per hour, turning the air into a white wall of death. The temperature outside read -70°C and dropping fast. Jack sealed the last power loader in the equipment hangar, his fingers stiff even inside thermal gloves. His breath came out in clouds despite the industrial heaters running full blast. Every instinct screamed at him to get inside the main facility, to get warm, to get safe. That's when he heard it. A scratching sound. Weak. Desperate. Coming from the other side of the massive hangar doors. Jack pressed his face against the frozen porthole window, squinting through the swirling snow. Something moved out there. Something big. His first thought was equipment breaking loose in the storm, but equipment didn't move like that. Equipment didn't sound like that. His radio crackled to life. Rivera, this is David. Give me a status update. Everything locked down? Jack's supervisor was safe in the admin building 3 kilometers away, probably sipping hot coffee while Jack froze his ass off out here. The thought made him smile despite everything. Yeah, almost done, Jack said. Just finishing the final checks. Give me 2 minutes. Make it 1. Weather service says this storm's about to get a whole lot worse. Get yourself inside, buddy. The scratching came again. Louder this time. More frantic. Jack's hand hovered over the door release button. Every regulation, every safety protocol, every piece of training told him not to open those doors. Nothing survived out there. Nothing should be out there. But something was. Jack killed his radio link and hit the emergency release. The doors parted with a hydraulic hiss. A wall of snow and wind slammed into him, nearly knocking him flat. 3 massive shapes tumbled through the opening, collapsing onto the hangar floor in a tangle of scaled limbs and frost. Dragons. That's what everyone called them. The Draknari. Jack had seen pictures in briefings, had heard the warnings. Dangerous. Territorial. Banned from all human colonies after they'd raided mining operations in 3 systems. Contact was strictly forbidden. Harboring them meant prison time, maybe worse. The largest one lifted her head. She was enormous, easily 3 meters tall even lying down. Her scales should have been golden and glowing with their natural bioluminescence, but frost covered them completely. Ice crystals clung to the ridges along her spine. Her eyes, normally brilliant yellow, had dimmed to a dull amber. She looked at Jack with an expression he understood immediately. He'd seen it in a mirror 2 years ago when Emily was in the hospital with pneumonia and the doctors weren't sure she'd make it. Pure, desperate terror for a child's life. Please, the dragon whispered in broken standard. Her voice sounded like gravel sliding over glass, rough but somehow musical. My child. Dying. Please. The male dragon beside her was barely conscious. He'd wrapped his body around a much smaller form, a juvenile no bigger than a large dog. The little one's scales were completely gray, lifeless. Its chest barely moved. Jack's radio exploded with David's voice. Rivera. Your signal just dropped. Rivera, respond immediately. Jack stared at the family collapsed on his floor. At the parents who'd somehow survived conditions that should have killed them. At the child who wouldn't survive much longer without help. He thought about Emily. 7 years old, back on Earth with her mother. He hadn't seen her in 2 years because of this posting. 2 years of missing birthdays and school plays and bedtime stories, also he could save enough money to give her a better life. What kind of man would he be if he turned away from another parent trying to do the same thing? Jack ripped the radio headset off and crushed it under his boot. The plastic cracked with a satisfying crunch. He hit the door controls, sealing the hangar against the storm. Can you move? He asked the male dragon. The creature's head rose slowly. Intelligence burned in those golden eyes along with something else. Pain. Fear. But also determination. The look of a father who would do anything, sacrifice anything, to save his family. Yes, the dragon rumbled. We hide. Not endanger you. Too late for that, buddy. Jack grabbed a thermal blanket from the emergency supply locker. Come on. Follow me. Stay quiet. He led them deeper into the hangar, past the newer equipment bays where the day crew worked. The old maintenance section waited beyond, a maze of forgotten storage rooms and ancient machinery that nobody had used in years. The company had built the original colony 2 decades ago, then expanded with shiny new facilities. This whole section had been abandoned and basically forgotten. Perfect for hiding 3 dragons. Jack got them into the furthest room and cranked up the ancient heating system. It groaned and coughed but eventually started pumping warm air. Not enough, though. He could see it in the way the mother dragon's scales remained dull, the way the child's breathing got shallower. Stay here. Stay quiet. I'll bring supplies. Why? The mother dragon's voice was stronger now, warming up along with her body. Your kind hates us. Fears us. Laws forbid this. Jack paused in the doorway. How could he explain it? That some things mattered more than laws. That he'd looked into her eyes and seen the same love for her child that he felt for Emily. That being human meant choosing compassion over convenience, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. I don't hate anybody, he said finally. Especially not parents trying to save their kid. The next hour passed in a blur of controlled panic. Jack raided the medical bay, grabbing bandages, pain medication, thermal packs, anything that might help. He hit the cafeteria, stuffing food into bags without knowing what dragons even ate. Water. Blankets. A portable heater he'd been saving for his own quarters. He moved through the service tunnels, the forgotten arteries of the old colony. Most people didn't even know they existed. Jack had explored them during his first month on Glacier 7, when he was bored and lonely and missing home. Now that knowledge was saving lives. When he got back, the father dragon had wrapped himself completely around his daughter, sharing his body heat. The mother watched Jack approach with an expression he couldn't quite read. I am Scylla, she said. My mate, Thomas. Jack nearly dropped the supplies. Thomas? You have a human name? The male dragon's head lifted slightly. We chose human names. When we decided to leave our clan. Wanted to show we could change. Could be different. Thomas and Scylla, Jack repeated, kneeling beside the small dragon. What about her? Kate, Scylla whispered. She loves human stories. About dragons who protect instead of destroy. About heroes who choose kindness over cruelty. Jack's chest tightened. He unfolded a thermal blanket, tucking it carefully around Kate's small form. Her scales were ice cold to the touch. She's going to be fine. I promise. They will imprison you for this, Thomas said quietly. Your people. For showing us kindness. Jack pulled out his personal tablet and started searching the medical database. He had no idea what he was looking for, but he'd figure it out. He always did. Then I better make it count. Outside, the blizzard howled like a living thing, trying to claw its way inside. Inside, 3 dragons who'd chosen mercy over violence, who'd risked everything for their daughter, began to hope that maybe one human's compassion could be enough. Jack Rivera had just thrown away his career, possibly his freedom. He'd broken every rule in the book without hesitation. And he'd do it again in a heartbeat. 3 days into hiding the dragon family, Jack had developed a routine that would have made a smuggler proud. Wake up at 5 in the morning before anyone else stirred. Grab supplies from the cafeteria and medical bay while the night shift was changing over. Use the old maintenance tunnels to reach the storage room. Check on Kate's condition. Then clock in for his regular shift like nothing was wrong. It was exhausting. It was also the most alive he'd felt in years. The problem was Kate. Her condition wasn't improving. If anything, she was getting worse. Jack knelt beside the young dragon, running a medical scanner over her small body. The readings made his stomach drop. Her internal temperature was still falling despite the heaters running constantly. Her scales remained that lifeless gray color, and her breathing had become shallow and ragged. I don't understand, Jack muttered, frustration creeping into his voice. The heat should be helping. Why isn't it helping? Thomas shifted his massive bulk, careful not to knock over the equipment Jack had arranged around their hiding spot. The male dragon had been watching Jack work for 3 days straight with growing respect and concern. Draknari children are different from adults, Thomas explained, his standard improving with each conversation. External warmth is not enough. We have internal furnaces, you understand? Like engines that generate heat from within. But those engines need fuel. Specific minerals. Rare elements. Jack looked up sharply. What kind of minerals? Titanium. Vanadium. Chromium. The rare earth elements your people mine here. Thomas's voice carried old pain. In our clans, only the strongest children receive proper minerals. The weak ones, they fade away. It is how we maintain strength in the species. That's barbaric, Jack said before he could stop himself. Sila's laugh was bitter. Yes. It is. That is why we could not stay. We refused to watch our daughter die simply because she was born small. We challenged the clan leaders. Demanded they share resources with all children equally. They declared us traitors. Jack stood up, his mind already racing. I work at a mining colony. We pull those exact minerals out of the ground every single day. Give me a list. Everything she needs. By lunch break, Jack had diverted 3 ore samples to his personal locker. He told the logistics crew he wanted to study mineral composition during his off hours. Technically not a lie, just a creative interpretation of the truth. The hard part was preparing it. Jack spent 2 hours in the old fabrication shop, grinding the ore into fine powder and mixing it with water to create a paste. He had no idea if he was doing it right, but he had to try something. Kate barely had the strength to lift her head when he returned. Scylla coaxed her daughter in their native language, a sound like wind chimes made of crystal. It was beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time. Jack held out the bowl of glowing mineral paste. Try this, sweetheart. Just a little bit. Kate's eyes opened slightly, those golden eyes that reminded him so much of Emily's hopeful gaze. She licked at the paste hesitantly, then again with more interest. Is it working? Jack asked, unable to hide the desperate hope in his voice. Thomas watched intently. We will know in a few hours. If her furnace restarts, her scales will begin to glow again. Jack wanted to stay and watch, but he'd already been gone too long. People would notice. He set up a timer on his tablet to check back in 2 hours, then forced himself to return to work. The afternoon dragged by like molasses. Every minute felt like an hour. Jack caught himself staring at his tablet so often that his co-worker Billy asked if he was waiting for lottery results. When his shift finally ended, Jack practically sprinted to the maintenance tunnels. He burst into the storage room, heart pounding. Kate was sitting up. Her scales had a faint copper glow, weak but definitely there. She looked at Jack and made a sound that might have been a dragon's version of a laugh. It worked, Jack breathed. Holy hell, it actually worked. Scylla touched his arm gently with one massive claw. You saved her life. Again. We owe you a debt we can never repay. You don't owe me anything. Just keep getting better, okay, Kate? The young dragon nodded, her eyes already brighter than they'd been in days. Jack was cleaning up the empty bowl when the door burst open behind him. He spun around, his heart nearly stopping. Maria stood in the doorway, her eyes wide as she took in the scene. 3 dragons, medical equipment scattered everywhere, Jack holding a bowl that still glowed faintly with mineral residue. Holy Mother of God, Maria whispered. The rumors are actually true. Jack's mind raced through a dozen excuses, a dozen explanations, but what came out was simply, Maria, I can explain. You've been stealing medical supplies for 3 weeks. Half the cafeteria inventory is missing. David is about to launch a full investigation, and if he finds out before you can hide the evidence, you're going to prison. Maria stepped inside and closed the door behind her. Are they dangerous? Only if you threaten their kid, Jack said carefully. Maria approached Kate slowly, her geologist's curiosity overriding her fear. She knelt beside the young dragon, studying her with professional interest. She's hypothermic. Her internal furnace failed. She looked at the mineral paste residue. You're supplementing with rare earth catalysts. Smart. But your delivery method is inefficient. You're not going to turn us in? Maria reached out carefully and touched Kate's scales. The young dragon watched her with cautious curiosity. My grandmother fled violence too. Came to the colonies with nothing but the clothes on her back. Someone gave her a chance when they didn't have to. She never forgot that kindness. Maria stood up, brushing rock dust from her work pants. I've got access to the industrial mineral processes. I can make proper supplements, ones that'll actually work efficiently. But Jack, this can't stay secret forever. Too many people are already noticing. I know. I just need enough time to prove they're not monsters. Then we better work fast. Maria headed for the door, then paused. For what it's worth. I think you're either the bravest person I've ever met or the stupidest. Maybe both. Definitely both, Jack agreed. Over the next week, Maria became their secret ally and lifeline. She created mineral supplements that Kate could actually digest properly. She helped Jack build a better heating system using construction equipment nobody would miss. She even brought books, teaching Kate to read standard while the young dragon recovered. Thomas, grateful beyond words, started helping with repairs around the hangar. His claws, despite their size, could manipulate tiny components that human fingers struggled with. He understood machinery intuitively, seeing solutions that years of human engineering training had missed. One evening, Jack found Thomas repairing a complex hydraulic system that had been broken for months. The dragon had it working in under an hour. How did you learn this? Jack asked, genuinely amazed. Necessity, Thomas replied. In our clans, if you cannot contribute, you do not eat. I learned to make myself useful. He paused. But your people are different. You help without demanding payment. You save lives without asking what you will gain. This is not weakness, as our leaders claim. This is strength of a kind we do not possess. Jack sat down on a crate, watching Thomas work. Your people aren't evil, Thomas. You're just trapped in a terrible system. Some of you want out. Want better. That's why you're here. And you risk everything to give us that chance. Thomas's scales shimmered with emotion. Why? You do not know us. We are nothing to you. Jack thought about Emily, about every parent who'd ever fought for their child's future. Your parents trying to save your kid. That makes you everything to me. Kate, now strong enough to move around, approached Jack shyly. She held out a small crystal she'd somehow created, glowing within a light. For Emily, she said carefully. Your daughter. So she knows dragons can be good. Jack took the crystal, his throat tight with emotion. She's going to love this, Kate. Thank you. That night, lying in his bunk and staring at the crystal Kate had made, Jack realized something important. These weren't monsters who needed to be contained. They were people who'd been failed by their own society, who wanted the same things every person wanted. Safety. Hope. A chance for their children to have better lives than they did. If only he could convince everyone else before security discovered his secret. Because Maria was right about one thing. Time was running out, and when the truth came out, it was going to explode in ways Jack couldn't predict. He just hoped the explosion wouldn't destroy the family he'd risked everything to save. By the third week, Jack's carefully guarded secret had become the worst-kept conspiracy in colony history. He knew at least a dozen people were aware of the dragons hiding in the old maintenance section. The surprising part wasn't that people knew. It was that nobody had reported it. Danny from logistics started routing extra food supplies to Jack's locker without a single question. Just a knowing nod and a muttered "Stay safe, buddy." Lisa in the cafeteria began packing containers with triple portions, winking at Jack when he picked them up. Even old Frank, the night security guard who'd worked Glacier 7 for 15 years, somehow always scheduled his patrol routes to avoid the maintenance tunnels entirely. People are better than we give them credit for, Maria observed one afternoon. They were watching Thomas demonstrate a repair technique to a small group of fascinated miners who'd wandered into the old section. They just need someone to show them it's okay to care. Thomas had become something of an underground celebrity among the crew. Word had spread about his engineering skills, and workers started bringing him their broken equipment. A power drill that wouldn't hold a charge. A scanner with a cracked display. A loader transmission that made a grinding noise nobody could diagnose. Thomas fixed them all. Not just fixed them, but improved them. He'd add modifications, streamline systems, find efficiencies that human engineers had missed. The miners didn't care that he was a dragon. They cared that he could repair the loader in Tunnel 7 that had been breaking down twice a week for 6 months. How do you figure out the transmission problem? Billy asked, watching Thomas reassemble the complex machinery with careful precision. The cooling system was misaligned, Thomas explained, his standard now almost flawless. Your engineers designed for Earth normal temperatures. But Glacier 7 runs much colder. The metal contracts differently. Simple adjustment fixes the issue permanently. Billy shook his head in amazement. We've had 3 specialists look at that thing. Nobody caught it. Sometimes an outside perspective sees what familiarity misses, Thomas said modestly. Kate had charmed everyone she encountered, which was becoming more people every day. The young dragon helped organize tools with obsessive precision, creating systems that made the chaotic storage rooms actually functional. She asked endless questions about everything, her curiosity absolutely boundless. Why do humans give gifts on birthdays? She asked Jack one morning, her golden eyes bright with genuine interest. Draknari only acknowledged the day between childhood and adulthood. The day you prove your strength. Jack was checking her mineral levels, making sure she was getting proper nutrition. Her scales now glowed with healthy copper light, and she'd grown noticeably larger in just 3 weeks. Because every year matters to us. Life is precious and short, so we celebrate the time we have. We want to mark it, remember it, share it with people we love. Kate tilted her head, processing this. That is much kinder than our way. I like it better. Then we'll celebrate your birthday too, Jack promised. When is it? I do not know. We do not track such things. Then we'll pick a day. How about the day you got here? The day you survived and started getting better? Kate's scales shimmered with happiness, that emotional glow Jack had learned to recognize. I would like that very much. Scylla, watching this exchange from across the room, approached Jack later when Kate was distracted with her reading lessons. You are teaching her to be soft. In our world, softness means death. Jack looked at the dragon mother carefully. You're not in your world anymore, Scylla. And maybe being kind isn't the same as being weak. Maybe it takes more strength to choose compassion in a cruel universe than it does to just be cruel back. Scylla's scales rippled with deep thought. Our clan leaders would call that philosophy dangerous. They would say you are corrupting our daughter. Your clan leaders aren't here, Jack pointed out. And from what you've told me, their philosophy involves letting children die and raiding peaceful colonies for resources. I'll take dangerous compassion over that any day. A sound that might have been a laugh escaped Scylla. Kate asked me for more human stories. Do you have recommendations? Jack handed her his personal tablet, loaded with books he'd collected over the years. Classic stories about heroism and sacrifice, about people choosing to do right even when it was hard. Start with these. I think you'll find them interesting. Over the following days, Scylla consumed human literature like Kate consumed mineral supplements. She read about compassion, justice, redemption, sacrifice. Concepts that existed in Draknari culture only as weaknesses to be exploited. She began to understand why her family had always felt wrong in their own society. They'd believed in something their entire species had systematically bred out over generations. Hope. The simple belief that tomorrow could be better than today. Thomas and I have been discussing something, Scylla told Jack one evening. If we survive this, if we are not imprisoned or sent away, we want to help other Draknari families escape the clans. Show them there is another way to live. One crisis at a time, Jack cautioned. First we need to convince the colony administration you're not a threat. That's going to be hard enough. That conversation came sooner than Jack expected, and from an unexpected direction. David cornered him in the equipment bay at the end of shift. Jack's supervisor had a look on his face that Jack couldn't quite read. Stern, yes, but not angry. More like concerned and conflicted. Rivera. My office. Now. Jack's stomach dropped like a stone. This was it. The moment everything fell apart. David's office was small and cluttered with technical manuals and equipment requisition forms. The supervisor closed the door and sat heavily in his worn chair. I've known something was wrong for weeks, David said quietly. Missing supplies. Unauthorized power draws from the old section. You acting like a man with a guilty conscience and a secret he's afraid to share. He paused, studying Jack's face. The question I've been wrestling with is whether I should call security or just pretend I don't know anything. Jack met his eyes directly. I saved 3 lives, David. A mother, a father, and their kid. They were dying in that blizzard. What was I supposed to do? Let them freeze? They're Draknari. They're people. David leaned back in his chair, the old metal creaking. The official company policy is crystal clear. No Draknari contact under any circumstances. They're classified as hostile entities. I'm supposed to report this immediately. Have you ever actually met a hostile Draknari? Jack challenged. Or have you just read reports written by people who never bothered to ask why they raid colonies? They are starving, David. Their entire culture hoards resources for the strongest and lets the weak die. Some of them, people like Thomas and Scylla, they want out. They want better. But where can they go when every human colony treats them like monsters on sight? You're asking me to risk my career. To risk this entire operation. I'm asking you to walk down to the old section and meet them. 5 minutes. That's all. Then decide what you want to do. David stood slowly, reaching for his coat. 5 minutes. But Rivera, if this goes wrong, it's both our asses on the line. They walked through the maintenance tunnels in tense silence. Jack's heart hammered so hard he thought it might crack a rib. Everything depended on this moment. On whether David could see past species and classifications to recognize basic decency. The storage room door opened. Kate looked up from her drawing. She'd become obsessed with human art, spending hours creating pictures of the colony, of the people she'd met, of the life she hoped to have. Hello. Kate said brightly. Are you Jack's friend? David froze. He stared at the young dragon, at her careful artwork, at the neat organization of the room. Thomas and Scylla rose to their feet respectfully, their massive forms somehow non-threatening in the warm light. I am Thomas. This is my mate Scylla, and our daughter Kate. Thomas spoke with careful dignity. We owe Jack Rivera our lives. We ask nothing except the chance to prove that Draknari can live peacefully beside humans. That we can contribute, can coexist, can be more than the violent reputation our species has earned. David looked around slowly. At the books and drawings. At the repaired equipment stacked neatly in the corner. At Kate's hopeful golden eyes and the parents who radiated the same desperate love he'd seen in human refugees countless times. You said 5 minutes, David told Jack. Yes, sir. I'm going to need a lot longer than that. David pulled up a crate and sat down. Because I want to hear your whole story. Everything. And then we're going to figure out how to make this work without everyone ending up in prison. The thermal imaging system betrayed them in the end. Jack had been careful about everything else, but he'd never thought about the heat signatures. 3 massive Draknari bodies generating warmth in a section of the colony that was supposed to be abandoned and cold. Robert Pierce ran Glacier 7 like a machine. Every system monitored, every irregularity investigated, every rule enforced to the letter. When the colony's computer flagged unusual energy consumption in the old maintenance section, Pierce didn't delegate. He investigated personally. Frank found Jack in the cafeteria during lunch. The old security guard's face was pale, his usual calm demeanor replaced by barely controlled panic. Pierce is coming, Frank said quietly, sliding into the seat across from Jack. Full security team. He knows something's in the old section. You've got maybe 10 minutes, probably less. Jack's sandwich turned to dust in his mouth. How many guards? 4. All armed. Jack, you need to run. Get them out of here somehow. But there was nowhere to run. Glacier 7 was a frozen rock in the middle of nowhere. The next colony was 3 days away by transport, and the blizzard season meant no ships for another month. They were trapped. Jack sprinted through the maintenance tunnels, his boots echoing off metal walls. He burst into the storage room where Thomas was teaching Maria an advanced welding technique while Kate practiced her reading nearby. Security's coming. Right now. We have to go. Thomas rose to his full height, and for the first time Jack saw the warrior the dragon had been before choosing peace. His scales rippled with tension, his claws extending slightly. We will not run anymore. Thomas, they'll deport you. The detention facilities don't have the heating you need or the minerals Kate requires. She won't survive. Then we fight, Thomas said quietly, and Jack heard centuries of violent tradition in those 3 words. No. Jack stepped between Thomas and the door. That's exactly what they expect. What they've been taught to fear about your kind. You fight, and you prove every single prejudice right. You become the monster they think you are. What else can we do? Scylla demanded, gathering Kate protectively. Appeal to their mercy? Hope they see us as people instead of threats. Yes, Jack said simply. Because it worked on me. On Maria. On David and Danny and Lisa and Frank. On every single person who's met you and actually talked to you instead of just reading reports. The doors slammed open. Robert Pierce strode in with 4 security guards, their weapons raised and ready. The administrator's face was rigid with bureaucratic fury and vindication. Jack Rivera, you are under arrest for harboring illegal aliens, theft of company property, and willful violation of colonial contact protocols. Pierce's cold eyes swept over the dragons. And you 3 are to be detained immediately pending deportation to a secure facility. Jack didn't move from his position between the guards and the family. No. This isn't a negotiation, Rivera. You're absolutely right. It's not. Jack turned to face the security team. He knew these people. Had worked alongside them for 2 years. Shared meals, shared complaints about the cold, shared stories about families back home. Mike, you remember last month when the drilling rig collapsed in Tunnel 4? 17 people trapped, the whole structure unstable. Mike, a veteran miner with a scarred face and gray hair, shifted uncomfortably. Yeah, what about it? Thomas calculated the safe extraction angles in under 10 minutes. Your entire team made it out alive because he understood the structural dynamics better than our engineers. That was him. Mike's weapon lowered slightly. The dragon did that. And Lisa, Jack continued, addressing a younger guard with kind eyes, when you caught that virus going around last month and the medical bay was overwhelmed, who do you think stayed up 3 nights straight making sure the human medicine was prepared correctly? Making sure the dosage was right for your body weight? Scylla did that. She saved your life. Lisa's face went pale. I didn't know. Nobody told me. Pierce's face reddened. This is completely irrelevant to the situation. Is it? Jack's voice rose, years of watching injustice finally breaking through his usual calm. These people fled their home because they refused to let their daughter die according to some barbaric tradition. They chose compassion over cruelty. They risked everything for a chance at a better life. Does that sound familiar to anyone here? The guards shifted uncomfortably. Everyone on Glacier 7 had come from somewhere else, running from something. Poverty, violence, broken families, shattered dreams. Nobody ended up on a frozen mining colony at the edge of explored space because life had been easy. The regulations are clear, Pierce insisted, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. Draknari are classified as dangerous. The regulations are wrong, Maria said, stepping forward. She'd been quiet until now, but her voice carried absolute conviction. I've worked directly with Thomas for 3 weeks. He's brilliant, kind, and he mourns the violence his species has caused. He wants to make it right. He wants to prove Draknari can be better. David emerged from the crowd that had gathered. Word traveled fast in the colony, and it seemed like half the workforce had shown up. Pierce, I've personally reviewed Thomas's engineering solutions. He's solved problems we've struggled with for years. His value to this operation is undeniable. This isn't about value, Pierce started. The hell it isn't, Danny shouted from the back. Everything's about value in the corporate world, right? You want value? A Draknari family working with us instead of against us? That's worth more than any ore deposit we'll ever find. Kate, trembling against her mother, spoke up in a small voice that somehow carried through the entire room. Did I do something wrong? I tried so hard to be good. To learn human ways. To be helpful and kind like Jack taught me. The room went absolutely silent. Several guards looked away, unable to meet the young dragon's frightened golden eyes. One of them, a woman named Rachel, wiped at her face quickly. You haven't done a single thing wrong, sweetheart, Jack said gently. Then he turned back to Pierce, and his voice went hard. But we have. Humans have. We've judged an entire species by the actions of the desperate and starving. We've refused to even consider that some of them might want peace. Want partnership. Want the same exact things we do. Safety for their families. Hope for the future. A chance for their children to have better lives. Company policy clearly states. Company policy can go straight to hell, Mike said, setting his weapon down on a crate. I'm not pointing a gun at someone who saved my entire crew. Lisa followed immediately, lowering her weapon. Me neither. Not at someone who sat by my bedside when I was sick. One by one, the other guards set their weapons down. The message was clear and unmistakable. Pierce looked around frantically, his authority crumbling. This is mutiny. I'll have every single one of you fired and blacklisted. Then you'll have nobody to run this colony, David said calmly. Because if they go, we all walk. Every single person here. The administrator's face went white. You're bluffing. You need these jobs. Try us, Maria challenged, crossing her arms. Some things matter more than paychecks. The standoff hung in the balance like a knife edge. Pierce's by-the-book authority against the collective will of people who'd looked past fear and seen simple decency. Then Thomas did something unexpected. He knelt down, making himself smaller, less threatening. His massive form somehow conveyed humility and respect. Administrator Pierce, I understand your regulations exist for good reasons. My kind has earned your distrust through violence and raids. But we wish to change that. Not just for our family, but for all Draknari who dream of peace but have nowhere to go. Thomas's voice was steady, dignified. Give us a chance to prove our worth. Monitor us. Restrict us. Put us under any rules you see fit. But please, I beg you, do not send us back to die. Scylla knelt beside her mate, her scales glowing with emotion. We will work the most dangerous areas. The place is too hot for humans, too toxic for your equipment. We ask only for shelter and the right to raise our daughter without fear. Pierce stared at the kneeling dragons, at the rebellious crew, at Jack Rivera standing defiant between them all. Jack could see the calculation happening behind the administrator's eyes. Deportation meant losing his entire workforce and possibly his own job. But allowing Draknari to remain meant risking his career if corporate disapproved. Unless it worked. Unless this impossible situation somehow became a success story he could take credit for. This is highly irregular, Pierce said finally, his voice tight. Yes sir, Jack agreed. The best things usually are. I don't have authority to grant asylum without corporate approval. So request approval, David suggested. In the meantime, they stay. Under whatever supervision you want. But they stay. Pierce was trapped and everyone knew it. House arrest. Confined to the maintenance section. No contact with operations without direct supervision. And Rivera, if this goes wrong even slightly, it's entirely on your head. Understood, Jack said, relief flooding through him. I'm not finished. I'm recommending a trial integration program. 6 months. The Draknari work under strict oversight. We monitor everything. At the end, corporate decides their permanent fate. Pierce straightened his uniform. But I'm also noting that they've already demonstrated measurable value to this operation. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even close to fair. But it was a chance. A real chance. Thomas bowed his head. Thank you, Administrator. We will not disappoint you. 6 months passed like a fever dream. Thomas and Sila worked like they had something to prove, because they did. 16-hour days in conditions that would kill a human in minutes. They entered mining tunnels where temperatures hit 400 degrees Celsius, places where the rock itself glowed red with heat. What was lethal to humans was merely uncomfortable for Draknari. The result spoke louder than any argument Jack could have made. Ore production increased by 30%. Equipment failures dropped dramatically because Thomas could sense structural problems before they became catastrophic. 3 potential cave-ins were prevented because Sila detected instabilities in the rock that human scanners missed entirely. Kate thrived in ways that made Jack's chest tight with pride. She attended the colony school, sitting in a classroom designed for human children but adapted for one young dragon. She dominated mathematics, her mind processing numbers and patterns with incredible speed. But what shocked everyone was her art. Kate's paintings covered the cafeteria walls now. Swirling abstracts of color and light that seemed to move when you looked at them. Landscapes of worlds she'd never seen but somehow imagined. Portraits of the miners who'd become her friends, captured with an emotional depth that left people speechless. Children who'd initially been terrified of her now fought to sit beside her at lunch. She taught them Draknari words, and they taught her playground games. Jack watched her playing tag with human kids one afternoon, her larger form moving carefully to avoid accidentally knocking them over, and he had to turn away before anyone saw the tears in his eyes. But the real test was coming. Corporate headquarters had been reviewing data for 6 months, analyzing reports and testimony. The decision would determine everything, not just for Thomas, Sila, and Kate, but potentially for Draknari human relations across the galaxy. The message came on a Tuesday morning. Pierce called an emergency all-hands meeting in the main assembly hall. Jack stood with Thomas, Sila, and Kate near the front, his stomach churning with anxiety. Maria squeezed his hand. David gave him an encouraging nod. The entire colony had turned out, nearly 200 people packed into a space meant for half that. Pierce stood at the podium with his tablet, his expression completely unreadable. Corporate has completed their review of the trial integration program for Glacius 7. They've analyzed 6 months of productivity data, incident reports, and detailed testimony from colony personnel. The pause felt like it lasted forever. Jack's heart hammered so hard he thought everyone could hear it. Their decision is as follows. Pierce looked up from the tablet, and for the first time in 6 months, Jack saw him smile. The Draknari family designated as Thomas, Sila, and Kate are hereby granted permanent residency status within the colonial system. Furthermore, they are being offered full employment contracts with complete benefits equal to human workers. The hall erupted. Cheers, applause, whoops of joy. Jack felt his knees go weak with relief. Beside him, Kate burst into tears, pressing her face against her mother's scales. But Pierce held up his hand for silence. There's more. Corporate is authorizing Glacius 7 to serve as a pilot site for what they're calling the Draknari Integration Initiative. We're cleared to accept up to 5 additional Draknari families on a case-by-case basis, with the possibility of expansion if the program succeeds. This time the cheers were deafening. People were hugging, crying, celebrating something that felt bigger than themselves. A chance to prove that cooperation mattered more than conflict. That understanding could bridge even the widest gaps. Sila and Thomas embraced their daughter, their scales shimmering with every color of joy and relief. Kate's sobs of happiness were almost musical. Pierce waited for the noise to settle. Jack Rivera, step forward please. Jack's relief evaporated instantly. Here it came. The punishment for breaking every rule. He'd known this moment would arrive eventually. He'd accepted it as the price of doing what was right. Pierce handed him 2 official documents. The first is a formal citation for violation of colonial contact protocols. It will remain in your permanent employment file. Jack took it without flinching. Worth it. Completely worth it. The second document, Pierce continued, and was that actually warmth in his voice? Is a commendation for exceptional humanitarian service and innovative problem-solving under unprecedented circumstances. Corporate has also approved your promotion to Senior Operations Manager, effective immediately, with a salary increase of 40%. Jack stared at the documents, unable to process what he was hearing. The words swam on the page. You broke the rules, Rivera, Pierce said quietly, so only Jack could hear. But you also proved that sometimes the rules need to break. That takes courage I'm not sure I possess. Well done. The celebration lasted for hours. Someone produced contraband alcohol that had been hidden for special occasions. The cafeteria staff prepared a feast. Kate performed a traditional Draknari gratitude dance, all grace and controlled power, moving through the ancient forms with beauty that left everyone mesmerized. Later that evening, Jack found himself on the observation deck with Thomas, looking out at the frozen wasteland that was Glacier 7. The double moons cast silver light across endless ice fields. I received a transmission this morning, Thomas said quietly. From my brother who still lives in our clan. 3 families have requested information about escape routes. They heard what happened here. They want what we have. Jack looked up at the massive dragon beside him. Can we help them? If you will stand with us again, yes. Thomas's scales glowed softly in the moonlight. You gave us more than shelter, Jack Rivera. You gave us proof that our impossible dream was actually possible. That Draknari and humans could build something better together than either could alone. I just opened a door in a blizzard, Thomas. You 3 did the hard part. You proved yourself every single day. Then we will hold that door open for others. Thomas extended his massive foreclaw. There is a Draknari concept, Thraka. It means a bond forged in shared survival, a debt that transcends life itself. My family owes you Thraka. Jack gripped the claw in both hands. You don't owe me anything. Just promise me you'll keep being exactly who you are. Keep showing people that different doesn't mean dangerous. This I promise. The observation deck door opened. Kate ran out, followed by Emily. Jack's daughter had finally gotten permission to visit, her first trip off Earth. The 2 girls had bonded instantly despite the age difference, 13-year-old Emily treating 7-year-old Kate like the little sister she'd always wanted. Dad, look what Kate taught me. Emily held up a canvas covered in luminescent paint that seemed to glow from within. She showed me how to mix the pigments so they catch the light differently. It's beautiful, sweetheart. Kate tucked herself against Jack's side, and Emily joined them on the other side. Jack wrapped his arms around both girls, human daughter and dragon daughter, and felt a profound sense of rightness. I have a human sister now, Kate said matter-of-factly. Is that allowed? Emily grinned. Totally allowed. Right, Dad? Jack looked at his family, this impossible mixture of species and circumstance that somehow worked perfectly. He thought about how close he'd come to walking away that night. How easy it would have been to follow the rules, to let fear override compassion. Yeah, he said, his voice rough with emotion. That's exactly how it should be. 3 months later, the first refugee family arrived. A Draknari couple with twin sons, fleeing the same violent traditions that had driven Thomas and Siler away. Then another family. Then 2 more. Each one carefully vetted, each one desperate for peace. The colony expanded to accommodate them. New facilities, new opportunities, new friendships forming between species that had been enemies for generations. Draknari and humans working side by side, learning from each other, building something unprecedented. News spread across the galaxy. Other colonies requested information. Anthropologists arrived to study this impossible partnership. Politicians debated its implications for interspecies relations. But on Glacier 7, none of that mattered. What mattered was Kate teaching human children her language while learning theirs. Thomas mentoring young engineers in techniques refined over millennia. Siler organizing cultural exchanges that celebrated both species' rich traditions. And Jack Rivera, watching it all unfold, knowing that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose compassion when everyone expects cruelty. Choose understanding when fear would be easier. Choose to see people instead of classifications. The frozen colony had become a beacon of hope. Living proof that cooperation could triumph over conflict, that kindness could bridge any divide. It all started with one man who heard scratching at a door during a blizzard and decided that some things mattered more than rules. That every life had value. That family wasn't defined by species but by the bonds we choose to forge. Jack stood on the observation deck one last time, watching dragons and humans working together under the alien sky, and smiled. He'd broken every rule in the book to save 3 lives. He'd do it again in a heartbeat. And now, thanks to one act of simple human decency, the galaxy would never be quite the same.